10-4. 9 days before LS Fest. Gonna head to the shop, gotta wrap up the GTO, gotta basically finish up the entire tune on that thing. Worked on the tuning a little bit last night to get us a good base file to start off with today. Also gotta walk around the parking lot, see if anything got dropped off last night. I don't believe anything got dropped off. So this is the reason why I don't schedule right before LS Fest. I'm anticipating everybody getting their projects wrapped up hopefully over the weekend. So I'll go to Bristol tomorrow to Cletus and Cars, hang out, have a good weekend, not really work too much. I'm gonna have some vehicles to tune there, maybe some familiar vehicles to you guys. But we'll tune those while we're there, hang out, have a good time with everybody, come back home, and next week's gonna be a very busy week. So I should have a helping hand next week. He'll probably bring his own cars to tune, but I'm also gonna see if I can convince him to help me get my stuff done as well. So Dyno's gonna be slam packed next week, which is cool. Yeah, so let's go on and head to the shop. By the way, as I'm editing these videos and learning how to do this whole YouTube or social media thing, I do realize I say entirely too much. Honestly, I'm just used to talking to somebody in front of me versus trying to come up with things to say in front of the video. So my head as a tuner, I mean, I've got 10,000 things constantly going through my head. And so trying to get what's in my head out to you guys and make sure it's simplified enough to where you can understand and be able to improve your skills and also be able to ask me questions in return. It does take me some thought process, and apparently I've developed this habit of saying So be ready for all the uhs. Do not turn this into a drinking game or else you will be dead from alcohol poisoning in a matter of minutes. So let's get to the video. Alright guys, so back in the GTO. Car is still up on the dyno. Loaded in the file that I built for it last night. Not any crazy changes, just some small fueling changes. Made some changes to the throttle body for the IAC stuff for cold start and everything. I'm going to do a warm-up. First thing I want to do is I want to check short-term idle trims, and basically what we're going to do is we're going to log engine coolant temp versus the short-term idle trims. And in the table that I've got built, we can actually take whatever it says. So say the ECU is adding 4 grams per second. We can actually add that into our base running airflow table. So I'm going to do that right now. Key is going to be on. I'm going to go ahead on and connect to the car. Wideband is going to take a second to warm up. I don't have constant power on this thing right now, so I need to make sure my channels are pulled up correctly. And I'll relog back into the car. Click the record button, and here is first startup. Alright, so you'll see right now 3.6 grams per second of airflow being added, which is, well, it's pulling right back out, so some of that's going to be in startup airflow. Like I told you guys yesterday, I hadn't actually made that adjustment yet, so car's going to settle in here pretty quickly, and from pretty much this point on, we're going to be just off the base running airflow table. So we're a little bit off, nothing crazy. Car is in closed loop right now. Primarily I did that because I didn't have a whole lot of time yesterday on idle and open loop. Also with idle with a camshaft, your wideband is going to show you almost a false lean condition. The narrow bands are actually going to be more accurate when it comes to idle values for sure. Looks like we got a little bit of an imbalance right here. This is bank 1 versus bank 2. So we'll see if that goes away. I didn't notice any issues like that yesterday, so it could just be a little bit different wear on the oxygen sensors. It could also be leaky injector O-ring, something like that. So we'll make sure that we want those to be as close as possible together. So car is actually, hang on, let me check alcohol content on this thing. Not actually even logging that channel, so I'm gonna stop this recording right now. Let me show you guys how to add a channel real quick. So you're gonna just go to an empty spot, you're gonna right click, you're gonna hit add channel, and I'm gonna type in alcohol, or start to type in alcohol, and I'll double click this to add this in, because I did do a fresh flash this morning. Whenever I first started the car up, it may have not been close enough on alcohol content. Usually after you go do a reflash, it'll start off at like, I don't know, 10%, and it'll rapidly come up. So I just wanted to verify that we are for sure back to our 71.5% alcohol. So gonna let this warm up. Some of this fueling also could be in the bias tables. What that is, that's essentially your intake air temp versus coolant temp. And make sure I have those disabled. I do. So in stock form, this is actually enabled. And what it does is, because your intake temp sensor is built into the mass airflow sensor on a lot of vehicles, there's obviously going to be a difference in intake temp between the mass airflow sensor and the air by the time it gets down to the intake valve. So what GM does is GM looks at coolant temp versus the amount of time that the engine's been running, as well as the amount of airflow the engine's consuming, and it's going to try to do a bias between the two temperatures. So say coolant temp's, I don't know, say coolant temp's 180, intake temp is 100, it's going to actually have a bias between the two. So at lower airflows, because the airflow is going slower, it's going to bias more towards the coolant temp, because, you know, obviously you've got your throttle blade closed, you got a lot of stagnant airflow in the intake manifold, and it's having a lot more time to heat up from the coolant temp and the cylinder head temp. As airflow increases, the air doesn't have as much time to warm up as it's coming through the intake manifold, so it's actually going to bias more towards intake temp itself. With this application, we actually have the temp sensor in the blower post intercooler. So because of that, the bias isn't going to necessarily be needed. There's a very short path now between the intake temp sensor and the intake valve. Still not perfect. Ideal situation is going to be intake temp sensor being in the runner as close as possible to the valve. But in these applications, a lot of times it's not possible. So anyways, we're going to go back to our scanner. Still haven't touched TPS voltage, so the throttle blade angle is going to be basically the same. Vacuum's pulled it down, so your voltage is going to swing a little bit, especially because obviously as the throttle body warms up, things are going to expand. So we're staying between 0.02 of a volt, whereas with the other one we were swinging like as much as like 0.06 volts. So I haven't touched anything else though. Voltage looks good, everything looks good. Idle desired airflow is actually, you'll see we're at 19.5 grams per second roughly, and that's about where we're at on fueling, so that's good. Everything looks good. So basically, as this car's been warming up, I can basically take any of these values and I can input them into the base running airflow table, which is going to be under idle airflow, base running airflow, idle airflow value. So this is where I ended up at yesterday, just in those quick little adjustments that I was doing. So what I've got is I've actually got a table right here called STIT, and if you'll look, the axis is our coolant temp, and you'll see the actual input value is our short-term idle trim. So once this car is done warming up, I can actually take this and copy it, and I can paste it directly into this car. A lot of guys will have their cars tuned and wonder why the tuner couldn't get cold start, you know, accurately, or they, you know, say, you know, you took your car to Florida to be tuned and you actually live in New York. Well, obviously when we started this car up, it really wasn't it wasn't that cold. So because of that, we can't get cold value. So what I'll do is I'll look at my last known value, and then I'll look at this base running airflow table in the 2D chart, and I'll just try to make it, you can look at trends, and so I'll try to make the trend line follow and hope that gets cold start done. Another reason why I want to teach you guys this stuff is even if you're going to pay somebody to tune your vehicle, it is always a good thing to have your own HPtuners interface. So that way, if you have a cold start issue, you can actually take a cold start data log and send it to your tuner and have them, you know, make the adjustments. GM will take months, if not years, to develop a calibration. We get hours usually. This car right here, even though you'll see it in 3 videos, collectively I'll probably only have 5 to 6 hours in tuning, after obviously the debacle of the China 102 throttle body. So anyway, so I want to let you guys kind of see what I do on a cold start. Obviously I've been monitoring the wideband at the same time to see where we're at short-term fuel trims, which is using the narrow bands versus the wideband, what its reading is. So yeah, everything's looking pretty good. So I'm going to get in here, I'm going to take this data that I've got from cold start, I'm going to input this in, And then we're going to start working on, I'm going to set the dyno up for vehicle simulation, and I want to start working on the Throttle Follower, which is that's a table that controls when you rev your throttle, how quickly the engine comes back down. When it's on a stick shift car, that's going to be when your clutch is pushed in and you're revving. When your clutch is pushed out and you're rolling down the road, that's actually going to be your rolling idle table. And whenever you're rolling down the road with your clutch out, that's going to be based off your Throttle Cracker table. So we're going to do all that. Obviously, you guys noticed that as I was doing some coast down stuff on the dyno yesterday, the car would stall. Again, that wasn't a big deal. This is all normal stuff. So I want you to see that even a 17-year veteran in tuning, every combination is different. When it comes down to base files and having these cars perfect, like for remote tunes, usually that's on more common combinations. Well, there's not a lot of guys that have a 04 P59 GTO with actually, let me pull up my phone real quick and I'll tell you guys. So this combination is a 379 LS3, and it has a BTR Stage 3 NA camshaft, LS9 head gaskets, says it's a mildly ported LSA blower, 238 upper, stock GTO lower, and 1 3/4 long tubes. So this is probably the only car in 17 years that has that exact combination. So that's where we're at. I have to build this stuff from scratch. Even with the throttle bodies, I can take multiple Nick Williams throttle bodies and every combination is going to be different because the amount of vacuum. So when you're looking at your IAC effective area versus IAC position, the amount of vacuum you're pulling through that IAC will dictate basically how much effective area you have. Each vehicle, depending on camshaft, is going to change that IAC versus effective area. So anyways, I want to make these changes and I will turn the camera back on once we're ready to do some coast down stuff, and we're going to play with that, and then we'll roll into some steady state stuff and I'll show you guys a little bit of that. Obviously, I'm not going to get too detailed with it, but I'll show you the more basics version. I use a V calculation that's based off of brake fuel consumption. So the way I tune V is a little bit different, but I'm going to show you guys the easier way of doing it to where, especially when you're first getting started, you can use this route. So I'll be right back. All right, so we're back. Air brake is off. Fans are on in front of the car. Exhaust fans on behind the car. Let me move my stuff out of the way of the shifter. And let's go in and drive the car. Gotta get used to this clutch. So we're gonna go up. Let's just go to, let's go right about there. I'm gonna clutch it. Alright, so we got some surge. Let's see here. Is it gonna stall? Looks like it's gonna stall. Alright, so this, basically what this is right here is, and we're done. So, stopping the car, stopping the log. That right there is gonna be more so related to the PID table. So again, if you want to know what PID tables are, you'll have to research those on your own. But it looks like we're overshooting and undershooting, and it's not keeping itself under control. So, actually, for one, let me watch that back. Where is? All right, so here we are cruising. Okay, so we don't have any idle cracker going right now. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna go under rolling idle, and let's just give it a 0.5 gram per second of airflow. And then under throttle cracker, let's do the same. Let's do it from like 20 miles an hour. Let's give it a 0.5 gram per second. And just to be uniform, I'm gonna make this 0.5 gram per second. This is probably going to piss the car off, but we will see. So I'm going to load this in. I'm going to click use high speed. Alright, car is flashed. Now again, I told you I was going to work on the PID, but right now we're just going to work on throttle cracker and rolling idle. The PID stuff, I hope I don't have to dig too much into it. It's got some settings set up right now where it should be close on the Nick Williams stuff, but I may have to make an adjustment. So start this thing up. You notice how much faster the car started that time? You saw I didn't change anything for fueling or anything. It's literally on these conversion boxes. Sometimes when you shut the engine off, you'll get it in a weird spot and it takes it longer to sync. Sometimes you'll get it on that perfect spot and it'll sync immediately and it lights right off. That's out of my control. So that's part of it. Everything looks good. So we'll start driving it again. Right now, eddy brake's off. We're just free rolling this drum right now. I just want to get it up to speed kind of quick without using too much throttle input. So I'm going to clutch it. And if you notice how now Throttle Cracker is actually working, that's actually going to be based off our rolling idle. So we're going to let it coast down. If it'll keep running, we're going to let it coast all the way down. All right, so we're going to add some more. Car fired up. Gonna record the log. Now again, I want to do this because when I'm steady state in the car, I want to be able to like let off the throttle and do all that stuff and the car stay running. So this is just my way of doing this. Again, for those of you guys that may have not caught my earlier videos, this stuff is all learned from trial and error from myself. Now, I read patents, I've read books, I get on YouTube, I've gotten, basically use every resource known to man on tuning to learn what I've learned, and I've developed my own theories on everything, and so I do everything my own way now. You can do it your own way, you can follow the tuning books, you can do whatever you want. I'm just teaching you how I do it. It's what I've learned to be the most effective way for me to tune. Everybody else may be different, but again, this is how I do it. So idle stabilized. Let's get the mile an hour back up again. By the end of the day, I'll get good at this clutch, and then I'll be in a different type of stick shift vehicle with a different clutch, and then it'll mess me up again. All right, so we're about the same spot. You'll see we got the 1 gram coming in here. Car is more stable. If you notice, we're not dipping as bad as what we were. Well, take that back. We're still dipping. All right. I'll work on PIDs. I'll be right back. All right, guys. It's been some time. I wanted to go ahead on and just get this stuff dialed in off camera. Obviously, this car is taking a little bit longer, so I apologize. I wanted to have a little bit more information in today's video, but it's just not going to happen. I got to get this stuff done. So anyways, got the car up on the dyno right now. I've already steady stated the car in. Again, all I'm doing is I'm looking at actual versus commanded EQ or lambda or air fuel ratio, however you're going to be tuning. I'm doing that in each RPM cell. So I just would sleep at 1600 RPM cell, then 2000 RPM cell, and I could go all the way from off throttle to full throttle and just sleep through and get the VE table roughed in. So that's where we're at right now. So I'm going to go ahead on and ignore any of this. That's all from yesterday's stuff. Dyno is set up and ready to go. We're going to do 3,000 to 6,400 on this pull. Car will have a touch more timing than what it had yesterday. Probably should end up around the 14.5 degrees up top. This is going to be a 4th gear pull, and here we go. Alright, so the dyno is stopping. Ignore these numbers. Our numbers will actually pop up here in just a second. Again, that was a 3,000 to 6,400 RPM pull. This car is going to want more RPM than that. I'm just trying to ease this thing up. So we are looking at 564, 536. So already pretty big jump. We can go back through here and look. You'll see air fuel ratio right here, actual versus commanded, is pretty close. And we're within 1% or so. You'll see peak timing is 14 degrees. Intake temp is pretty good. Everything looks solid. So this car is going to want some more timing than that for sure. So I'm going to go ahead on and I'm going to put 2 degrees in it, and then I'll start doing smaller increments after that. So anyways, I'm going to make these adjustments and I will be right back. Alright, so just resetting up the dyno. This one's going to be a 3,000 to 6,600 RPM pull. Tune is flashed in. Again, I just added 2 degrees. Like I said, I know right about where this thing's going to want. After this pull, gains are going to start to be smaller. So I'll creep up on it. I've probably only got maybe 2 or 3 wide open throttle pulls left. Now some of you guys are thinking, why didn't I do like 20 pulls? I don't do that. It's like I said in one of the videos. I don't like abusing these cars on the dyno. If this customer's going to take it to the track and he wants to read the plugs and check mile per hour, we can creep up on it a little bit more. But as far as where I'm at, y'all have to understand that tuning, as long as you've got an experienced tuner working on your car, or as long as you're taking your time working on your car, mechanical parts is where the power gains are. You don't want to lean on a tune-up like crazy. You just don't. I know a lot of guys, watch Street Outlaws, or they've watched Cletus, or they've watched that. You got to understand that big turbo, big block, big power adder cars, tune-up is critical. I mean, especially the shape of your boost ramp, all that stuff is critical. In this application of cars, tune-up isn't as critical. As long as it starts, runs, drives, air fuel ratio is decent, timing's in the ballpark, the car is going to be happy and it's going to make the power where it's at. Now, with that being said, are there going to be certain tuners where they may make 15, 20, 30 more horsepower? Yes, but it's because they want to lean on the car harder. Pretty much anybody, a novice can go behind me and pick up power on the dyno more than likely. It's not the fact that I don't know how to get to to that power level. It's the fact that I understand the longevity of these engines after all these years of tuning, and I understand about how far back I need to hang to make sure that they stay just as reliable as ever. So anyways, let's go on and do a rip. Like I said, 3,000 to 6,600. Here we go. Still haven't got used to this clutch, by the way. Going into 4th gear. Intake temp's 93, coolant temp's 196. So let's hammer down. Car's definitely got some MVH up top. Feels pretty rowdy. If I didn't know that this was a brand new drive shaft, I would think we'd have issues. But I guess we're okay. Let's see where we're at power wise. So 596, 559. So again, that was with 2 degrees more. So after this, we're going to be diminishing results. But the car right now, yesterday I said I thought the car was going to do right around 600 wheel in this dyno. It's basically right where we're at, which again is like 660-ish or so on a Dynojet. So what I'll do is I'm going to review this data log. Obviously we had decent gains, so I'll go in and try another degree. And again, for this degree, I'm going to want this thing to pick up at least 20 wheel peak. And I'll go through the curve or the trace, basically the graph, and I'm going to overlay them and look and make sure that in every area the timing is actually doing what I want it to do. Basically you want it to look like a railroad track, where if you put in a degree, that curve, you want it just to be a little bit higher but the same shape. If the shape is changing, that means that degree or whatever you just added or subtracted didn't do what you wanted to do. So anyway, so I'll do that again off camera. This video is already going to be probably pretty long as it is. So I'm going to do that, but we're definitely making some gains. Alright guys, that tune file is loaded in. You'll see we're still on the 596, 559 pull. All I did was add a degree. So we're going to go there. Leaving everything else the same at the moment. I need to raise the rev limiter as well. but we'll get there. I haven't had my camera outside the car, so I went ahead on and put it out there so you can get an idea of what this pull looks like from outside. So I'm going to start that up. All right, you'll see intake temp still good, coolant temp is still good. Car's ready for a rip, so here we go. Ignore this number. Did it not record? Alright, either it didn't record for whatever reason. Yeah, no, that's what it had to have been. So the dyno, we had a little bit of a glitch in the dyno. So let me figure this out and I'll be right back. Alright guys, I reset the dyno computer. I don't know what was up with that. So looks like tack signal's working okay. Watch it, make sure it says running through test window when I get down on it. So stop the log. Looks like we got a peak of 16.5 degrees. Obviously dyno is stopping, so we'll see what these numbers update to. Alright, so 603.8. Intake temp was obviously a little bit warmer on that run. Coolant temp was a little bit warmer, but overall, I mean, that still seems like that's all about all the car wants. So yeah, for what this car is going to be used for, I'm going to pull that degree out. Got just a couple spots where I need a little bit more fuel, and just work through the final stuff. So anyways, I'll be back. We're going to put this car on the street and go from there. Alright guys, so we are cruising in the GTO. We're going to wrap up this car. I was double checking everything on the street. Make sure that I can clutch it in and that it comes down to idle and holds. About ran the car out of ethanol, so that's not good. But anyways, got the laptop going obviously. Just going to work on making sure, like I said, coast down's good, drivability's good, startup's good. Double checking the short-term fuel trims versus the wideband, because obviously when I steady state a car, I'm doing an open loop with my wideband, so just trying to make sure that they are both cooperating together. And it looks like right now I'm within a couple percent. But anyways, so that's basically going to finish up the GTO. I have a love-hate relationship with this car essentially at this point, but either way, it's going to be a fun car for sure. They've still got a couple of little kinks to work out. Before they even brought me the car, before they even got the car even close to being done, I tried to talk them into putting this thing on a Terminator X. So hopefully that comes in soon, because I'm sure they're going to want more power. And honestly, for this application, just the Holly is just really where it's at. So anyways, another beautiful day here in Nashville. This is my last work day of the week, because I'm going to be going to Bristol in the morning. I may take some videos from Bristol. I'll probably do some stories at least on Instagram, but I don't know, we'll see. Haven't really taken a vacation as a YouTuber yet, so we'll figure that out. So that wraps up my little video series on the GTO. Obviously, I'll have a bunch of vehicles to tune next week, so if you aren't already subscribed, please do. Appreciate the likes and follows. May take some videos over the weekend at Bristol, may upload, not sure. Plan on just going and having a good time, but I am going to be surrounded by a bunch of freedom, so never know what I may film. Anyways, GTO is going home. Got plenty of other cars coming up. Thank y'all, and y'all have a good day.